I'm happy for you that your play takes place 100 years ago because I think the past or the future are almost easier places to pin our imagination right now. It seems like setting something in the present is the hardest because,
Hmm.
I mean, what is the present?
I'm Darby Sherwood. I'm going to be a junior at the University of Washington, and I am a playwright.
I'm Karen Hartman. I am also a playwright. I was the senior artist in residence at UW for 5 years from 2014 to 2019. And now I am Darby's mentor for the year for the project, the play she's going to write. You describe it a little bit. Is it a troupe of performers 100 years ago in Russia? Is that
That's
what
what
you're
I'm,
writing?
yeah, that's what I'm working on right now. So, like, recently I've been researching the Belarus Free Theater, especially because they're sort of a modern, like, protest theater, because, again, Belarus is one of the, like, last true dictatorships in, like, the world and especially the Europe area. And so it's been really interesting to look at what they're doing now and how that relates to their current circumstance, and then to also be doing research on the agitprop theater that was happening in the Soviet Union in like the 1920s, as well as sort of looking at what's happening in like the United States now, especially at this time. And so what I'm trying to do is write like an agitprop play where it's set in the 1920s with like the Russian agitprop actors, but it also sort of reaches into like an American audience and the things that we're dealing with and the way that we're trying to figure out how to make meaningful art in a weird time.
So this is amazing because just this last month you've been looking at Belarus Free Theater, right? Because that was
Mm-hmm.
one of your assignments. And what has struck you, and how has it changed your project to look at their work so far?
I was reading an article where the people who run it were talking about how the Belarus Free Theater like isn't allowed to announce their performances. They have to like they hide their theater, and like every time they're going to have a performance, they like put it on social media for like an hour and then they take it off. Definitely really hit me that like there are just such high stakes to that, and like what would be really high stakes in other situations, or like what is the danger of telling a story, and then why are those stories dangerous. So agitprop was this theatrical movement in the 1920s, right when the Soviet Union was being established, because there were like a lot of people were illiterate, a lot of people didn't have access to news anyway, even if they could read, even though they probably couldn't. And so the agitprop was like a group of people would go either in factory floors or to different provinces on a train, and they would perform these like propaganda skits that would let people know and be sort of their big way to know what the government was saying and like what the new policies were, what was allowed, because obviously a lot of things were changing. And so sort of the most interesting thing to me there is that art was literally like the first line of defense of saying like we're creating a new society, and this is the only way you're hearing about it is through these like plays and these people performing. So definitely something that I want to play with is first of all sort of showing the way that propaganda is created on stage, especially in this period, and then also showing um, way that sort of more nuanced art, either that being in the interactions of the people off stage versus when they try to like bring the nuance onto the stage, how that changes what the propaganda is and what the message of theater can be.
That's exciting.
Yeah. What have you been working on lately?
I had a Guggenheim Fellowship last year, and I spent most of my time working on researching this play about the role of big tech in creating culture. So, specifically, what does it mean? It's very similar in a way to your idea, except it's
Mm-hmm.
the big tech instead of the government. But what does it mean that Amazon has their own studio? What does it mean that these culture patrons are also in charge of the means by which we get all of our information, and what is the problem with that? So I wrote this play really quickly in the early part of the year, um, that is about a professor who's teaching a course called Right to the Dark, that's about sheltering from the gaze of big tech. And then I really finished it right before the pandemic. I was on a retreat in February. And so now I'm reworking it because it might be great. It might be a great post-pandemic play because it's about it. I thought it was a dystopia, but the time it's in is maybe not any worse than the time we're actually in right now. So it's not really that dystopic. It's just sort of an alternative. Um, but people in this world have gotten very afraid of what is live and unmonitored. And I wonder, I mean, especially for people of your generation for whom this time is a really, this year is a really significant portion of your life. You know, the younger you are, the more of your life you're spending in this strange time, this way of being like we're being watched right now. We're being recorded. We're on like Zoom has all kinds of privacy issues, and everybody, we all just have to look the other way and make it happen so that we can connect. But what are the costs of that? How much do we get used to that? You know, in some ways it's so much easier to be digital. So I'm exploring that. And then I'm working on I'm developing a musical about these German teenagers in Hamburg who were super into swing dancing, and they became kind of accidental radicals because they wouldn't stop swing dancing even when swing dancing was banned by the Nazis, and some of them wound up in concentration camps, and they were labeled among the most dangerous dissidents in society. But they were really just, they started as these privileged kids. So it's a little bit like the white teenagers in the Black Lives Matter movement, kind of how far will kids go to use their privilege. And that's been good because I've been listening to a lot of um, swing music, which is very cheerful.
It's been really, really interesting to try and figure it out, especially like as a writer too, like where do I place myself in like the circumstances, and like do I think of myself in like this time of quarantine all the time, or will that become dated super fast? So it's definitely been interesting to figure out what the present is. Another thing that I'm working on is it's for like the pandemic play series with Radial Theater Project. So I wrote like a play about a guy who makes puppets to deal with his loneliness, and so it's
Oh yeah.
been interesting a lot trying to figure out like will these plays that are written during the pandemic and written for the pandemic seem current forever. Hopefully not. It's interesting because like we'll be watching a TV show and it'll be like, whoa, all those people are like way too close, or
Oh
like
yeah,
why aren't
yeah.
they wearing masks?
What's it like to be studying theater? What do you anticipate is the field that you're studying for?
Playwriting has been really interesting because I feel like in a lot of ways people are more focused on like we need words that we don't have to pay rights for, or like people are looking for more
Mm,
new work in this time because the
yeah.
circumstances are so different. So in that way it's been nice that playwriting is like my main thing, because that's kind of the one aspect of theater that people are still interested in right now.
Mm.
But I feel like the most fun part of playwriting is that it can be such a collaborative process. So like, I really miss being able to like be in a rehearsal room and be doing like other aspects of theater. Like I do a lot of assistant directing with School of Drama. Like I miss being able to be in those rooms and like learning from direct observation. So it's definitely bizarre imagining that like in 2 years I'll graduate with a BA in drama, and hopefully I'll be able to be in a rehearsal room before that time.
Mm. Mm.
So the Emmys just happened, and I saw this video on Twitter of like what happens when you lose the Emmys, and it was this intern in a hazmat suit holding like an Emmy, like waving as he like left whoever's celebrity's house posted that. And so it was insane to me that like in order to make quarantine as comfortable as possible for like the wealthy and like the celebrities, it's like interns and like service workers, interns dressed in hazmat suits, and like service workers having to still go and put themselves in like a potentially compromising position every day. So I think that's something that I've seen a lot is like because again, like a lot of my roommates have to go to work every day, and like we're all trying to like live within the pandemic. And that's sort of the scariest thing to me, is that people are like, oh, we can go to restaurants again, we must be okay. But it's like we can't like we can't make art again, we can't go to rehearsals, we can't get education. Yeah, how do you feel about sort of theater right now, and then what theater will be in the future?
It's hard. It's really hard to look at, to live in New York City and to look at a city that's defined by the theater and that defines the theater and that's, completely dark. So here's what I have to say that's hopeful is that I don't think anything's going to cut off the theater because there's a need to make theater. People will always be making theater. Maybe it'll look like your, theater troupe, the agitprop people going around in a van. The theater, the professional theater, has been hanging on by a thread anyway. And there are two opposing forces, right? Because there's a real uprising and reevaluation around especially racial justice and other issues of fairness as we see, who can afford to sit this out and who will still be there when the theater comes back. And on the other hand, a huge move towards safety and security. So the things that have been announced are that I've seen are incredibly conservative. It's like we're gonna come back to Broadway with our town. It's the most terrified. Everybody is so terrified. So how can the theater go towards what's brave instead of what is, defended? The best case scenario is that there just won't be any choice because we will have to go to the spaces that open up when commercial real estate prices go down. That's great for the arts. Some of the things that are bad for the economy could be good for the arts. Will the arts get any help? That doesn't look amazingly likely to be a high priority. Um, will these ideas of how we gather what it is to have a conversation change in an interesting way? I don't know. I think all of us have had our immediate future robbed. You're having part of your education robbed. I was supposed to have 4 New York productions of my plays this fall. And that meant a great deal to me. And I don't know if that midpoint, peak point will come again for me. So I'm trying to separate the theater with the theater for me. Because I think the good news about being younger is that you will take a worse hit earlier because you'll graduate into fewer opportunities. But whatever rebuilds will include the young. And so that's good.
I think that's definitely realistic. I feel like looking at like I just sort of have this excitement for when it is back in full, which who knows how long it could be, but I am excited for the time when like everyone will want to see everything because it's like a chance to commune together. So like whenever that is, I'm excited for it.
I think it may be the case that whatever events we're able to cobble together, whether they're outside, whether they're solo performers and we're all sitting in saran wrap, that those events will do a lot for us and for our feeling of being together.
Hmm.
That's also true.
That's
Yeah.
right.